we are. I think I'm slowly figuring out the tech here. How to change the orientation. I think it'll come out horizontal now. We'll see. I don't know. I'm not that great with technology. Um, it's when I came out a little bit earlier, it was just dead quiet. There was no wind. And I climbed up here in the tree, and got windy on me. But maybe it'll calm down. Um, this is pretty cool. I'm gonna have to make this a habit. I'm up in a tree stand in the maple tree behind our house. I put the tree stand up here. I had a tree stand out in the woods for hunting, but I haven't I haven't used it really hardly at all because Rachel's stepdad, he hunts like every day, and they give us so much deer meat that there's like no need for me to go hunt. I don't really have time anyway. But I thought, all right, Elijah loves to climb, and there's a rock climbing area not far from us, and I wanted to start getting him climbing on the rock there. But first, he's got to get used to the harness and the rope and learn all the safety stuff. So I thought, well, I'll set my tree stand up in a tree behind our house and rig up an anchor. I got an anchor rigged up here. You can see, probably can't see it anyway, with a rope where I can haul up a proper climbing rope, and I can belay him and let him climb up and down. See, it's kind of a ways down. Ooh. Anyway, that way he can practice and get used to the technique and safety and stuff. But this morning I was like, man, it's not a bad spot to sit for morning coffee. I got my thermos up here, and yeah, I got a lot on my mind this morning. I've been running our numbers from last year. See how much money we lost. That's what I was joking, which is really true. Oh man, what do they say? If you want to make $1 million farming, start with 3 million. But anyway, yeah, I have sheeponomics on the brain today, and probably will for a while, as I kind of make adjustments to our plan. I was just thinking about how, because I used to be in academia. I was a researcher, and I was an engineering professor for a little while, and I was in that whole scene of writing research proposals to get funding for research projects and all that kind of stuff. And I was just thinking about how different all this kind of entrepreneurial, I guess agro-entrepreneurial work is very different than academic work in so many ways. But I guess just one of the ways is how you have to operate, and in terms of your plan and your financing and everything. Because in that, like, okay, if you're writing research proposals, right? Typically, what you do is you have this idea for a research project, and you craft a plan, and you plan it out to like the nth level of detail, and you just workshop it and 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 create this proposal, which is a super in-depth, super detailed plan, and you basically get it to perfection, or as near perfection as you can possibly get it, because it's going to be picked over by a group of PhDs, in your field or related fields, and they're going to find all the holes and all the problems. So you have to work like mad to get your proposal as near perfect as you can get it. So it's many, many late nights over several months, and just tons of hours and tons of effort to have a plan in super detail. And then you submit it, and then you wait, typically several months. And the hit rate is usually pretty low, like sometimes like 4%, I think, for National Science Foundation proposals. Don't quote me on that, but that's what somebody told me a while ago. And I was like, man, that's kind of depressing to do all that work for maybe a 4% chance. But typically what happens is you get rejected, and then, you get it back, and you get comments, and you change some things, and you tweak it here and there, and you polish it further, and you find the weak spots or whatever the reviewers defined as weak spots, and you work on those. And then you resubmit it, and sometimes people resubmit several times every year, resubmit with some changes, and maybe eventually you get it. But um, but obviously you have to have special circumstances for that to work, because who could afford to like spend like 60 or 80 hours a week working on a proposal for a few months, and then just have to wait 6 months to hear anything, and then to probably hear you get rejected, and then to work on it for another few months and submit it. And so you have to have kind of guaranteed income while you're waiting through all that. But anyway, just the idea of having this crazily detailed plan totally worked out up front, before you get any money, before you really do any of the work, is kind of how it's framed. Whereas with something like what we're doing, I mean, we're trying to build up our sheep production, for example, and we're trying to make our sheep program provide, not like a whole livelihood for a person, all inclusive with health insurance and all that kind of stuff, but just rather the sheep program makes a meaningful economic contribution to our household and farm. And of course, you have to have a plan. I'm certainly not advocating to just throw planning out the window. I'm a big planner, and I like detailed plans, and I like to iteratively go over them, which is what I've been doing, all along, and what I've been doing the past few days, and I'll continue to do the next few days to looking over our numbers and making plans for this year. So I'm all about planning, but the reality is you have to plan a little bit, and then you start working. And the thing is okay, well, how much does it actually cost to raise a sheep? That's an interesting question. It sounds like a very straightforward question. It's actually not that straightforward. It's kind of it's complicated, and it depends, as I like to say about all scientific questions. And so coming up sort of with a tracking system for how much does it actually cost us to raise these animals, and how much can we get, we sell the meat, and so on. At the end of the day, it's all got to pencil out, right? But in order to get accurate numbers to start working with, you have to start working. And necessarily there's going to be inefficiencies in the process, which you figure out over time and you correct or improve. But basically, the name of the game, rather than like in contrast to academia, where you craft a plan to absolute perfection and then sit back and wait to find out if you get money to enact the plan, here you've got to start enacting something and gathering data as you go, and then making refinements to the plan as you gain experience, as you gain insight, as opportunities come up that you can't foresee, roadblocks come up that you can't foresee. A big thing happened last winter. I'm not going to go into the details, but for a few years, we had a grazing arrangement with a neighbor, and all of a sudden it fell through. And spring was coming right around the corner, and we had more sheep than we ever had on this farm. And we're like, what in the world are we going to do? So, I went into outreach mode, and we made some good friends over the past year, and made some good connections with people who said, oh, I would love to have a group of your sheep at our place. We've got a little pasture in the back, and you can graze some animals over here. And we've made friends with people. We've started these collaborations. It's been really beneficial. And those good outcomes never would have happened if it wasn't for the negative thing of a previous arrangement, kind of all of a sudden not working out. So things like that come up, and you have to go into scramble mode and figure out what you're going to do. But then a lot of times it turns out really cool. Something really cool comes out of it, and you just can't plan for that kind of thing. You just have to adjust on the fly. It's very improvisational, which I feel like my work in water and sanitation abroad in developing countries and in unstable regions, it's like you need to make a plan. You need to plan as much details as you possibly can. And then you get on the ground and you start enacting the plan, and you realize that the plan is going to have to change every which way, and you're going to have to improvise. And it's the same thing here. You make a plan, as much detail as you can, anticipate every possible thing that you think might go wrong, and there's going to be a bunch of stuff you can't anticipate. You hedge against whatever you can, anticipate whatever you can, and then you adapt and you improvise around what happens. So anyway, we're in the process of building up a program and gathering the data, figuring out what it actually costs to raise a sheep, and how do we access the markets where we can sell our lamb at a good price. And we're kind of figuring you have to figure this stuff out all at once at the same time trying to grow. But the key is you make a plan, you get some cash flow coming in, sell some lamb, got some cash on hand. Okay, now we can buy feed. Now we can buy more fencing. Now we can buy some materials and build another porta-shelter or whatever. And just try to make the operation, sort of feed itself in a way. And I've just been going through our numbers from last year. The kind of encouraging thing was that, all along I've sort of done some estimates of what are the appropriate ways to track costs, for example, for sheep. Dogs are barking. Based on the analysis I've done so far of last year's numbers, my estimates are pretty good. Our feed costs were a little bit higher than I anticipated. I think there's some ways to get those down. That's going to be key, is to try to. We're kind of, one thing that's challenging is, so we buy our feed, like, okay, if I'm just talking, there's multi-dimensions of sheep feed. Obviously right now they're eating hay, so there's that. But they also get a grain ration, which has, more calories and minerals and micronutrients and all the other kind of nutrients that they need besides what they can get from hay. I think it would be very difficult for us to only have our sheep ever eat hay and grass. I don't think they would do very well. They would be undernourished, and especially the mamas. That's just unthinkable, really. Mamas, we buy alfalfa bales. We give them alfalfa when they're lactating and stuff. But we also give protein and mineral blocks, so they get supplemental protein. And we have a mineral mix that they need of critical micronutrients that's blended with salt, and they get that sort of free choice for that. It's like they can kind of tell when their body needs some particular mineral, and they'll go lick the salt. They just take it as needed. So we've got salt and mineral, we've got protein blocks, we've got a grain ration, which we get from a local feed mill, and then grass and hay. I mean, the bulk of their diet is grass and hay. Grass most of the year, and hay in the wintertime now when it's not growing. But in terms of the grain ration, we buy that in 50-pound bags. And I thought about, we could save money by buying it in super sacks, buying it in bulk, right? We'd save money over buying it in individual 50-pound bags. But a couple problems with that. One, if I buy a 1-ton super sack full of feed, we don't have a tractor. I don't have a good way to handle that. So there's some logistical challenges there that they're overcomable even without a tractor, but there's a challenge there. The other thing is, and the logistical challenges, in addition to handling the bulk feed, we have remote groups grazing on a few different properties. So it's not like we need all of our feed to be located in one place. We actually need it in a few different places to be convenient to give to the animals. So there's that issue too. The other thing too is, I would say, this year, I'll roughly say that we will go through about a ton of the grain ration every quarter. So I think 7,000 to 8,000 pounds for this coming year is kind of what I'm anticipating for that portion of their feed. So if I were to have a way to logistically handle, a 1-ton super sack, it would take us a quarter to go through it. And the problem with that is that, especially in the summer, when the humidity's up, storing feed for 3 months, it could rot. It's going to get moisture in it, and it could rot and go bad. So in a sense, we need to have, I don't want to store feed more than a month, really. So pretty much we're going to be doing monthly feed runs, buying about 600-700 pounds a month, which is doable. It's not, in terms of a time commitment, it's not horrible, but we got to buy it in 50-pound sacks. And then we created a feed room in the barn, but then some critters or the cats or something start scratching into the bags and getting into it. I had no idea that a cat would want to eat sheep feed, but I guess they do. Anyway, that proved to be kind of inefficient. Like, I would go buy a bunch of feed in sacks, I would load it all into the feed room in the barn, and then when I need to feed somewhere, I'd load it all out of the feed room into a vehicle or onto my shoulder or whatever and take it out to where it needs to go. It's a lot of loading and unloading. So now I go buy feed, and then I just make a circuit to all the places where we have animals. I've got metal trash cans out there, other containers that we can use that are weatherproof containers, and I just buy it and distribute it in one round, and that's more efficient. So I think we're basically going to be doing that monthly. And it is what it is. So maybe these are more nuts and bolts than you really want to hear, but I'm just thinking a lot about the economics of it, and thinking about, and I would say, like, I've figured out a way to, I look at our contribution to fuel, right? If I look at how much, I can't tell you off the top of my head right now, but I could add it up on a spreadsheet, how much I spent on gas for all our vehicles last year, for farm trucks and for everything. And then the question is, how much of that fuel bill do I allocate to our sheep program, right? I think in past years I said, let's just take half of it and say, or whatever, I forget what I did, but it was a huge amount. And I'm like, that made our numbers look bad. And also I was like, it's not really appropriate because we have many tasks that aren't necessarily directly related to sheep. And so let's just think about direct fuel expenses for the sheep. And then I have a new accounting method to do that. And then I want to add it up that way. It's not so bad. It's not a scary number. So that's cool. Processing is pretty much fixed. There's nothing we can do about it. I'll just tell you about the best deal that we can get is about $150 per sheep. So when I take a sheep in to the processor, and I get that box of meat back, it's going to be $150 right there. Having that animal just in the process, right? And then feed is a big cost category as well. And the way we do our accounting is, because we're establishing a breeding flock, we're going to process X number of animals per year, right? We have the babies, we grow them out. When they're at weight, then they get processed. And I actually assign the feed costs of the parents to the baby, because the parents live here and eat and breed and provide new babies. But where we get the income from, obviously, is selling the meat, or sometimes selling live animals, but generally speaking, we're selling the meat. So really, the feed costs for, if we process a lamb, the feed costs are really double. It's what that lamb ate and what its mom ate to raise it. So when you start to assign, then you have a 2 times feed bill for that one animal. And then it's like, ooh, okay. All right. Now we're talking big numbers, right? So you got that plus the 150 processing plus fuel, plus we have a category of like wellness, veterinary supplies, if we need medications, if just the stuff for shearing, just all the kind of stuff. We have a livestock camera to monitor in case we have, somebody's having a baby or there's predators or whatever. We need to monitor what's going on. Dogs are coming around or something. We have a subscription for data for our livestock cameras. All these things, that I kind of categorize as just overall wellness for the animal. That's not feed. So we got wellness, fuel, feed, processing, and then things like cost of doing business kind of stuff. We got to pay money to rent our spot at the farmers market. We buy business cards. We have other materials online, subscription to have data to make YouTube videos or whatever, all that kind of stuff. Promotion, marketing, so business kind of expenses. So those are the main categories. So we can make estimates about all that, add it all up, see what that comes to, and then say, okay, if we get a hypothetical sheep, gets processed, we get XYZ, we get loin chops, we get leg roasts, we get shoulder steaks, we get this, we get that, we get a heart, we get a liver, and looking at what are typical prices per cut for retail of pastured lamb in North Carolina. We get all the data on that. We get reports from USDA. We look at facts and figures. We look at our costs, and we come up with our pricing. And we say, well, hypothetical sheep processed at a certain weight, it comes out hanging weight, which is the carcass at whatever, and we'll get X amount of rib chops and loin chops and this and that, and lamb burger and this and that from the sheep. So what is a sheep's worth of meat worth at our retail costs, and how does that compare to what it costs us to raise that animal? And that figure is what it's all about. And how big does our flock need to be? How many sheep do we need to process per year at these prices and sell all the meat to make it pencil out? And based on how many sheep we're trying to process per year, how big does our flock need to be? Because we're keeping the mamas and the ram and all that. And then that's the sheeponomics of it. Anyway, I wanted to talk about sheeponomics today from the tree stand. Yeah. So I'm kind of figuring all that out, always refining it. It's gratifying to see when my numbers come out the way I think that they will. And to wrap this up and compare with my former career in academia, where I would craft a plan to absolute perfection and then sit back and wait to see if that plan would get funded to start the work. Here, it's like, well, we're just going to go headfirst into it, be as smart as we can, and then gather data all along the way and pull up and reanalyze as we go, and refine, expand, develop, improve, streamline. That's my word. That's my word for 2026, y'all. Streamline. We are streamlining out here. That is what we're doing. We are streamlining. We're live streaming and streamlining at the same time. Think about that. That's fantastic. But anyway, I've rambled long enough. Have a blessed day, everybody. This is Morning Coffee on the Farm. Live stream every day around sunrise, local time. Have some coffee, share some thoughts, enjoy the sunrise, count your blessings. We're counting our blessings. Think about what we have to do today, this week, this month, this year. Hope you have a blessed day, and look for me tomorrow. Same bad time, same bad channel.